The Metaphysical World of Isaac Newton, Alchemy, Prophecy, and the... You're going to find this intriguing, and I was shocked. I was surprised to see alchemy in there, but it immediately brought me back to John Dee. Now, we heard about John Dee when I had another special guest on the show discussing the things that he was delving into, which was alchemy, and both of them were very intelligent. So what's up with all these intelligent people being involved in alchemy? Well, if you delve into it, you're going to see why. You're going to hear some of it now, but there's more to the story. I really love this interview, and I'm going to have someone else come on the show to talk about another aspect of Isaac Newton. And before we bring Colleen out, I want you to know that your rewards are being processed, of course, and we are continuing to send those out, so hang in there. You will get yours. If you drop and then come back, it won't count, okay? So it's for continuous support. Now, if you know others that would enjoy this type of show or the things that we talk about, please let them know, okay? We're always trying to expand our listenership. If they like it, great. If not, great. All right, let's get on with it. I want to bring my special guest, Colleen Heinsohn, out, and she's going to be discussing the new book called The Metaphysical World of Isaac Newton. All right, my special guest tonight is Colleen Heinsohn, and we're going to be discussing the late author John Chambers' book called The Metaphysical World of Isaac Newton, Alchemy, Prophecy, and the Search of Lost Knowledge. Colleen, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight on Mysterious Radio.
Well, I'm glad to be doing this. It's a wonderful book.
Yes, it is. Now, okay, all right. So John has obviously passed, and I want you to just take a moment, Colleen, to tell them who you are and how you came across being able to speak for John about this wonderful book he's written.
Well, I was engaged by his wife to input corrections on his final manuscript, and I was really looking forward to meeting him because just reading through the manuscript to do corrections, I just kept reading and reading because he was such a engaging author, an amazingly good writer, and so devoted to his task here of revealing these kind of secrets that were in Newton's writings, his non-scientific writings, which were not even discovered or known to the world until 1936. And so John was fascinated with this. He's from Nova Scotia, and he had been an English professor in Montreal, and he had terrible insecurities about his writing abilities. And he, because I have familiarity with some of his much earlier writing and some work he did with channeling and getting writing instructions through channeling, and things that he participated in that were, considered pretty out there for a lot of people. But when I started with how he ended up, how this book, is so brilliantly written, and then I went back and saw his earlier writing and how insecure he was about his writing, and he would get blocked, and he wouldn't know how to develop a character. He was writing a novel also that never got finished, but he was always struggling and trying to make every word just right. And I could tell that from the very beginning he had much higher values of being an author than he thought he could meet himself. And so when I saw how he ended up with this book, where he eventually got to as a writer is really astonishing.
All right, now I do want to go back and reference that channeling in just a moment when we get a little further into the show. Now, okay, so I want to ask you this. Now, you talked about his writings weren't really known, or these non-scientific writings weren't known until 1936. So who found those and brought those out to the public again?
They were kept by his family. They were kept in a trunk, and if these writings had been known in his lifetime, he would have been burnt at the stake by the Catholic Church, the heretic. A lot of his writing was very heretical. He questioned a lot of things, and one of his biggest issues was Trinitarianism. He did not believe that God should be split into three, like the Catholic Church decided to do. And so he chronicles in the book the battles and arguments between Athanasius and Arius, the two, I believe they were archbishops, who argued about this topic of the Trinity. And Newton thought that God was singular, and that Jesus was an emissary, a teacher, someone who put forth God's writing, God's teachings, but not the same as God. And the church wanted to make him the same as God. And so that was a huge conflict. And Newton went into it in great detail and was very passionate about his beliefs about this. And he calls it the corruption of Scripture.
So here's the thing with homemade meals. Eating them is great, but all the chopping and measuring and cleanup, not so much. With new one-pan assemble and bake meals from Blue Apron, you get all the flavor of homemade meals with a fraction of the work. Just assemble the pre-chopped ingredients, bake in the oven, and enjoy. Shop, assemble, and bake at blueapron.com. Get 50% off your first two orders with code APRON50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What if comparing car insurance rates was as easy as putting on your favorite podcast? With Progressive, it is. Just visit the Progressive website to quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's direct rate. Then, their tool will provide options from other companies so you can compare. All you need to do is choose the rate and coverage you like. Quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
The Recap Show is an unfiltered, inside look into the world of global soccer and women's sports. Follow and listen to The Recap Show wherever you get your podcasts.
And there's a lot of corruption of Scripture that he gets into because, they had to fight over what was going to be in the Bible. This is back in the 3rd century. There was a lot of conflict over it, and of course the church wanted to include things that served its purposes. They invented purgatory. They went into a lot of things that were not really in the Bible. And so Newton had a big problem with this, and of course the Catholic Church would have considered him a heretic.
That is interesting that you say that the Bible's had all this extra stuff added to it. All right, we're going to talk about that later too. Let me shelve that one. I do want to talk about that and get a little deeper into it. This is very interesting that I saw, and I don't think it was, maybe it was in the book. Was Isaac Newton a virgin his entire life?
Well, yeah, people think so. They think he might have been homosexual. Such things were kept completely secret and hidden. He had a sort of a apprentice, somebody who was an assistant to him that he was pretty close to, but it was never brought forth that he was a homosexual. But, speculation. Yeah, he probably was. In the end, he may very well have been a virgin his whole life.
What did people think about Newton during his time? I mean, was he held in high esteem? I mean, so what do they think about him?
Oh, very much. Yeah, he was a professor. He was a professor at Oxford, and he was writing the Principia Mathematica during this whole time too, and which put forth the physics and the physical attributes of the universe in mathematical terms, and he was very highly esteemed at Oxford University, and so he could not. He didn't get into the religious stuff, his arguments in public, in an outward way. He believed that all of the principles of physics that he quantified in the Principia Mathematica proved to be God, as opposed to now where science and the church seems to be at odds. He felt that science, in its beauty and the way he could describe how everything actually worked, and that there was a system to it, and that it was really intelligent design on a huge scale. And he thought that proved the existence of God. He was actually a very religious man, and he was a Christian. He just didn't believe that the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost thing was they were all at the same level of divinity. But other than that, he was a very devout Christian, and he really thought that science just backed it all up. So he was very highly regarded, and he went through periods where he was a little crazy, like he had kind of a breakdown at one point, and there were people that did think he was a little bit nuts. And he left the professorship and became manager of the London Mint. He was the manager, ran the London Mint for many years, which seemed kind of an odd change in career. But he did that really well, and he was still highly regarded in that sense too. But he also was, in his private life, exploring alchemy. Alchemy was heretical to the church. It was illegal. He would have been pilloried. He would have been just really taken down if any of this had been known. There were a few people that were cohorts of his that knew about his other studies and things he was exploring, but very few.
Okay. All right. Now, so let's talk about that a little bit. Is he researching this behind closed doors? You said yes,
Oh, yeah.
he was. All right. So I want to know, was he researching this maybe in partnership with John Dee at that time? I don't even know if they crossed paths, or I'm just wondering if you know that.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But alchemy, they were really one of their main goals.
A little bit his interest in alchemy. Was he researching this behind closed doors? You said yes,
Oh, yeah.
he was. All right. So I want to know, was he researching this maybe in partnership with John Dee at that time? I don't even know if they crossed paths, or I'm just wondering if you know that.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But alchemy, they were really one of their main goals and objectives was to try to create gold out of other metals. And also believed that life could be brought forth from one kind of life, that one kind of life could bring forth a completely different kind of life. And this was something he stumbled upon in an alley in London, where he saw a dead cat in the alley, and it was covered in maggots. And he assumed that the cat was creating this other life form from its corpse, because he didn't realize that flies had laid eggs and that the maggots were, fly larvae. He didn't know that. So that kind of sent him on this path of, could one type of life form create a completely different kind of life form? And which, sounds kind of ridiculous to us, but visually that's what he saw when he saw that cat. And so that was another thing that he pursued that was a little bit really, on the outer limits of acceptable thought.
Okay. Now I want to talk about the creating gold out of other metals. I mean, why do that, and why was he so interested in doing that?
Well, for years, that was something that was pursued because gold was the most valuable thing there was. And so kings coveted it. They made things out of gold and were surrounded by their gold things. So everybody valued gold, and there was never quite enough of it for everybody. So if you could turn metal, some kind of metal, and they tried with all different kinds of metals, into gold, you'd be wealthy, and you could make a lot of other people wealthy. And it made sense to them because gold is created in the earth, and a lot of things are created by heat and the different kinds of heat and tumultuous things the earth has been through over the millennia. And so they just kind of thought, well, let's try and see if we can do that, make that happen.
Okay, very good. All right, so you talked about his channeling, and like I said earlier, the first time I've ever heard any kind of reference to this channeling during that time was John Dee, who was also brilliant mathematician, and his quest to find lost knowledge, which you also talk about in the book, but he pursued this by way of communicating with angels, some say fallen angels, in an effort to recover this lost knowledge. Is it one in the same?
It was not Newton who was pursuing things through channeling. It was John Chambers. And so I think that John Chambers' experience with channeling, for one thing, he wrote a book. I wish I had the title in front of me, and it was very famous. Okay, it'll come to me. He wrote a book about this man who was very famous in France in the 18th century, and cable tapping was all the rage in Paris. Victor Hugo, Victor Hugo, was very politically controversial and active, and he was writing a lot of plays. This was before he wrote Les Miserables and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He was exiled on the Isle of Jersey with some of his other intellectual friends, and they engaged in table tapping and communicating with spirits for 2 years, and they kept meticulous journals about this. John Chambers wrote a book. He translated it from the French. It's Conversations with Eternity. And Inner Traditions has also published that book. But so John had an interest in channeling, and he and his wife Judy, before he was writing the Newton book, engaged in Ouija board sessions where they're contacted different, what they called the guardians or guardian angels.
Mom, Dad, I just have to say, it breaks my heart watching you stress over dinner every night. This year, I don't want you doing the fridge stare down. Hot take, with the new Blue Apron, eating healthy is easy. They've got pre-made and one-pan meals with plenty of balanced nutrition. No subscription needed. You could be plating like a chef.
Projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin, or what that clunking sound from your dryer is. With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
And one of them was Joseph Conrad, the author, who is where John got his writing instruction from in his early years. And it was one of the ways he credits his incredible growth as a writer is coming from Joseph Conrad. And
you mean literally,
his wife, Judy.
You literally communicating with this man who's passed on?
Yes. Joseph Conrad, he wrote Heart of Darkness. I mean, he's a well-known author. And John was writing this novel, and was reading it out loud and then getting feedback over the Ouija board from Joseph Conrad about his writing. And he would say things to John like, always look for the unexpected word in your sentence. And John would say, I'm having trouble developing this character. Where should I go with this? And he got that kind of writing advice over the Ouija board. Judy had her guardian angels that she spoke with, and one of hers was Sarah Bernhardt, the old actress. And John and Judy also met with a medium and a group of people on Saturday nights, and they did where this woman was the channel, and Judy did some channeling, and so they explored this for probably 20 years, and they kept records of these sessions too, and notes. And one of the things Judy wanted me to do was to put together a book. John wanted this to be published, their experiences with the channeling. But he had done numerous versions of the book. It's over 400 pages. I believe he finished it, and he had an appendices and everything, but there were stacks of papers in boxes, digital files for only first 6 chapters, and the manuscripts were all mixed up like they'd been shuffled like a deck of cards, and there was no dates on any of them. And so it turned out to be impossible to put together a complete manuscript